Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avataravarishthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Sruti smriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavad padam shankaram lokashankaram shankaram shankaracharyam keshavam badarayanam sutra bhashikrito vande bhagavanto punah punah. We are starting a new adhikaranam, that is the sutram number 22nd, eighth adhikaranam, that is Akashastratlingat. So this is the sutra. So before actually coming to the topic, I will just create a background, because this is linked to some very, very important sections of the Chandogya Upanishads. So the subject, the topic is Udgita Upasana in Samaveda tradition. It is against the background of a story. Three scholars who are specialists in Udgita Upasana, two Brahmins and one Kshatriya, that's how the story goes. Shalavatya and Dalbhya are two Brahmin Pandits who are specialists in Udgita Upasana, and Pravahana Jaivali, who is a Kshatriya. So a discussion is going on Udgita Upasana. Finally, the question is put to Jaivali. Is this world the ashraya of Sama? Then what is the ashraya of this world? So I shall just read some of the earlier sections of the Upanishads. Then only we'll get the full background. So Upasana should conclude somewhere where the ultimate topic is Sarvasraya. So Akasha is Sarvasraya of all Upasanas, according to Jaivali. The question arises whether the word Akasha in this topic implies Bhuta Akasha or Paramatma or Brahman. This is the background of the discussion. So if you look at the text, you find here Ashtama Khanda. That's where it begins. Somayaga, there are 5 parts, singing, Samaganam, etc. going on. Udgitaha, that is Udgata, Prastava, Prastoda, Pradihara, Pradhikarta. These are the 5 aspects or 5 priests of this Somayaga. It begins like this, the first mantra, Shalavatyaha, Chaikitayanaha, Trayo, Kaudgiti, Kushala, Babhuvuhu, Silaka Shalavasti Chaikadayano, Dalbhya Pravahano, Jaivalihi Riti, Teho Vajur Gite Vai Kushalasma, Kanda Udgite Katham Vadama Iti. This is the first mantra. I won't explain and go through the entire Bhashya of this text. So, first of all, this, Shilaka, Dalbhya and Pravahana. The Shilaka is called, it's called Shailavatya called. That is Shilaka. And then the son of Chikitayana, Dalbhya, and the son of Jivala, called Jaivalihi or Pravahana. These are 3 great experts in Udgita. So they come together and discuss. And then say, let us discuss on this Udgita, Sama. This is a point here. Katham Vadama. Udgite Katham Vadama. Vayam Udgite Katham Vadama. Let us all discuss this Udgita. Udgita Upasana is a topic here. So to understand a deeper philosophy, you have to keep the story background here. And then, Tathedi, okay, they agreed. Some Upavivisuhu, Saha pravahano jaivelihi uvacha Bhagavanto agre vatadam Brahmanayor vatator vacham soshyami iti. So, well, Pravahana Jaivali said he's a Kshatriya, ancient tradition, ancient India, let's say. See, you are all two Brahmins, we are scholars in Samaveda. So, you first discuss, you just tell me, explain to me, I shall listen to you. Kshatriya is very humble and polite. So, he says, Tathedi sam upavivishuhu Saha pravakano jaivelihi uvacha bhagavantu agre vadadam. You first speak, you discuss or you expound. Brahmanayoho vadatoho vacham soshyamiti. I will listen to you because you are Brahmin scholars. I am Kshatriya. It's a whole story background. So saha shalavatya shilakaha. So that shalavatya chayitayanam dalbhyam uvacha. Saha shilaka shalavasti chaigadayanam dadbhyam uvacha handatva prachani iti pracha iti hovacha. So, well, if you permit, I shall ask question. So, what he did, you know, so Shilaka talked to Dalbhya, mentioned, asked Dalbhya. Well, if you permit me, I shall ask you. So, Uktayohu Saga Shilaka Shalavati Jaigidayanam Dalbhim Uvaja Handa etc. Bhashya, I'm not discussing Bhashya now. We'll come to Bhashya sometime when there is a need. Ka Samano Gatiriti. What is the Gati of Sama? Ka Gatiriti. Iti Hovaja Swarasya Ka Gatiriti. Okay, so Ka Samano Gatiriti is first question. What is the Gati of Sama? The answer is Sura iti hovacha. Sura is the Gati. Gati here means destination, ultimate goal, etc. This is a very important point, we'll discuss later. Surasya ka Gati iti. What is the Gati of Sura? Prana iti hovacha. Pranasya ka gatiriti, annam iti hovacha, annasya ka gatiriti, apa iti hovacha. This goes like this. Fifth mantra, apam ka gatiriti, asu loka iti hovacha, amusha lokasya ka gatiriti, na surgam lokam adinayeti hovacha, surgam vayam lokam Sama abhisamsthapayamaha sargasamsthavam hi sama iti. So this is how the discussion continues. Now the seventh mantra is important. Hantahametad bhagavatu vedaniti vidhi hovaja logasya ka gatiriti ayam loka iti hovaja asya logasya ka gatiriti na pradishtham lokam madinayeti hovaja pradishtham vayam lokam Sama abhisamsthabayamaha pradhisamsthavam sama iti. Now, the eighth mantra, tamham pravakuno jaivilihi uvacha. Andavadvai te shalavatya sama yastu etarhi bruyat murdha te vibhadishyati iti murdha te vibhadideti iti Handahamedat bhagavadu vedanidi vidhi hovacha. So this is the background here. There is at every point, an important aspect is made here. You know, Shalavati rejected the obvious answer. The Surga is the Pradeshtha of Soma. And not only that, your answer is wrong, not only that if somebody asks this question, Murdhate Vebadishyati, your head will fall off. Dalbhya said, Surga is the Pradishta of Sama, Shalavati rejected. Shalavati said, I am Loka is Pradishta of Sama, then Jaivali rejected. Up to this, we have to keep in mind. So the problem, the situation is this, the background is this, Dalbhya said, Surga is the Padishta of Swama. Shalavati said, no, it is wrong. Not only that, if somebody who knows this, and it tells you that your head will fall off, your head will really fall off. So then Shalavati said, E loka is Padishta, that is also wrong, Jayavali said. So the point is, up to this, both Dalbhya and Shalavatya gave answer to this question as to what is the Pradishtha of Swama. Their answers were wrong. And when the other person pointed out their answer is wrong, when Shalavatya rejected Dalbhya's answer, the Surga is Pradishtha of Swama, then Shalavatya told Jayavali that this world is the Pradishtha of Swama, then Jayavali rejected. In each case, you find the other person responds, your head will fall off. It means if you perform an upasana without proper understanding, your mind will be completely lost. Actually, you will be led astray. You will lose your spiritual path. You lose your track in your spiritual journey. That's the implication. Not the head will physically fall off. Our mind will get disturbed, and that can take us away from our spiritual path. It's an important point in Vaidika Upasana, Devata Upasana. Also in Tantrika Upasana. That's an important point that you learn when you study from teachers. When we perform any kind of Upasana, without thinking of the absolute Brahman behind, what happens is we may get confused, and if you are not very correct, we may lose a track, and that can lead to a lot of internal confusion. That is the spiritual implication of the statement. Murdhate vyabhidishyati means you will be led astray, you will lose your track, you may be misled. Examples are there from ordinary life. Those who practice pranayama without getting established in yama and niyama at the beginning of the spiritual life, if they practice any of the subsequent disciplines, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, these the three elements, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, together they constitute one important aspect which are integrated into one. But even practice of asana, pranayama, pratyahara, without getting established in yama, niyama, can lead to serious problems. That aspect is implied here indirectly. Now our main topic is here, that is Navakhanda. That is the central topic, that is the Vishayavakyam of this particular Adhikaranam. Every Adhikaranam has a Vishayavakyam, the central theme, which comes again and again, it's repeated again and again. So if you have got a book with you, later when you have got a book, you can read this. Navama Khandaka Asya Lokasya Ka Gatihi. The question Shalavatya asked Jayavali Pravahana. So remember the two Brahmins, the beginning of the discussion, each got a wrong answer. Finally, Jayavali had to come to the rescue, and when Jayavali pointed out the defects in their answers, then Shalavatya puts a question. What's the question? Asya lokasya ka gatihi. What is the gati, the ultimate destination, the pradishtha or ashraya of this world? Akasha idiho vacha. Akasha idiho vacha is the Vishayavakyam of this Adhikarana. Akasha idiho vacha is the Vishayavakyam of Akasha Adhikaranam. Sarvani hava imani bhudani akasha deva samutpatyante Akasham priyastam yanti akashu hi evebhyo jyayan akasha parayanam. This is the important mantra to be kept in mind to understand the logic of this adhikaranam. Asya lokasya kagitihi akasham iti uvachaha. Akasha is the gati, asraya, pradishtha of all this, everything in this world, this loka. The reason is given, sarvanikha imani bhudani akasha deva samutpadyanti. All these entities in this world, they emerge from akasha. Akasham pratyastam yanti, and they all get dissolved in akasha. Akasho hi evebhyo jyayan. Akasha is superior, greater than all these. And akasha parayanam, akasha is the pradishtha. Paramam mayanam pradishtha. So, what is the philosophical significance of this? If it is Bhudakasha, as Purvapakshin will try to establish, it is Bhudakasha. Sakashad Vayu Vayu Raknya Agni Rapaka Prithvi Prithivya Moshe, that the Srishti is mentioned here. That is a subject of discussion. It is Bhudakasha, as Purvapakshin as such, it is Bhudakasha. Siddhanti says it is not Bhudakasha. Why? Because Sarvani khva imani bhudani akasha deva samutpadyanti. All these bhudas that emerge, they originate from akasha. Now that description doesn't agree with the logic of bhudakasha being the source of the world. Impossible. If you look at take the Shruti statement, akashat vayuhu vayu raknihi Agnehi apaka adbhya prithvi. Up to that is okay. Panchamahabhutas. But then, akasham sarvanikha yuva bhudani pratyastam yanti. That cannot be. How can you say that all these bhudas, they merge back into akasha? Astam kichanti. So that cannot be applied. So Bhashyakara will build up the arguments one step after another. Akasho hi evebhyo jyayan. Akasha is greater than all this. Anukyataka asya lokasya ka gatiriti akasha iti hovaja pravahanaha. Jaivili jivalasya putraha jaivali is pravahanaha. Akasha iti cha paratma. The Bhashya says Akasha iti cha paratma. This is Upanishad Bhashyam, not Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. This part of Upanishad Bhashyam should be properly understood to be able to follow the trend of arguments in the Sutra Bhashya, because this is the basis of the Sutra. Bhashyakara summarizes or gives a gist of some of the arguments he already presents in the Sutra, in the Upanishad Bhashya, the Chandogya Upanishad Bhashya, that he summarizes in the Sutra Bhashya. So it's Upanishad Bhashya Anukyataha. So when he got permission, when Shailavatya got permission, then Shailavatya puts his question, Asya lokasya ka gatihi iti. The answer is, Pravahana's answer is, Akasha iti hovaja pravahanaha. Akasha iti paratma, Bhashyakara says. This Akasha is Paramatma. I mean, Paramatma is Akasha Shabdavachya. That's the idea behind. Akasho vai nama iti sutehi. Tasyahi karma sarva bhudotpadakatvam. Tasminneva hi bhuda pralayaha tat tejo asrajada Teja Parasyam Devadayam Idihi Vakshyati. Later in the Chandogya, the sixth chapter, etc., this comes again and again. In fact, some of these ideas are found in the Taittiriya, Itova imani bhudani jayante ena jatani jivanti ye prayanti abhisam vishanti. Chandogya also it comes, in the sixth chapter. Teja parasyam devadayam. So that is tasminevahi pralayaha. So everything will merge back into Akasha. The Akasha that could be the source of everything in this world, and the Akasha into which everything gets merged back at the time of Pralaya, that Akasha certainly cannot be this Bhutakasha. So that's how Bhashyakara brings us the idea. He demolishes Puravakshin's argument, who say that again and again it is Bhutakasha. Bhashyakara says, no, it is not Bhutakasha, it is Paramatma Brahman. So Akasha here implies Paramatma Brahman according to Siddhantin. Akasha here means Bhuta Akasha according to Purvavakshi. Sarvaniha vai imani bhudani sthavara jangamani Akasha deva samurpadhyandi Tejapannadi kramena samarthyat Akasham padi astam yendi pralayagale tenaiva viprita kramena Hyasmad Akasha evebhyo sarvebhyo bhudebhyo jyayan mahattaraha. Akasha is greater than all the Bhutas. Adasa sarvesham bhudanam paramayanam parayanam pradishtha trishabhi kaleshu ityartha. This is the Bhashya on the Chandogya Upanishad Navama Khandaka. After that, we will come to the introduction, formal introduction into this Adhikaranam. So this background should be kept in mind to understand the meaning of this. Now, normally in our tradition, before we begin our introduction into the Adhikaranam, we normally go through the well-known book Vaiyasika Nyayamala of Sri Bharati Tirtha, who is a great monk who lived in Sringeri, was one of the Sringeri Acharyas. So that is the background here. This is Siddhanta Sutra. There are some sutras, the Purvavaksha Sutras. This is Siddhanta, because the Bhashyakara mentions this sutra after making the background, and then the sutra is an answer, exposition of his thesis that Akasha here means Brahman or Paramatma. Tat lingas, certain lingas are mentioned that will explain in course of time. So Vaiyasika Nyayamala Akasha idiho vaja kam Brahma va atra kam. So what is the implication of the sutra? Samshaya, whether Akasha means just Bhutakasha or Brahman. Purvapakshin says, Shabdasya tatra rudhatvad vayuadehi sarjanat api. So, Shabdasya tatra rudhatva. Rudhatva means prasiddhi, common parlance. Normally the word rudhyartham, conventional meaning. It has got certain other technical implications according to Vyakarana Shastram that we'll discuss when we discuss the Bhashya. Rudhyartham, yogigam, yoga rudham, etc. we'll discuss later. So here to understand this Adhikarana, first is Samshaya. Whether Akasha means Bhuta Akasha or Akasha means Brahman or Paramatma. Purvapakshin says it is just Bhuta Akasha. Conventional meaning. Why? Because Vayu adehi sarjanad. Vayu adehi. Akashan Vayu, Vayuhu, Agni, Agnerabha, Abhya Prithivi, Prithivya Oshadheha. Oshadebhyannam. It goes like that, this cycle of creation. This is a conventional way of understanding. So Akasha here means Bhudakasha, not Brahman. Siddhantin says, no, it is Brahman. Sakasha Jagadutpatti Kedutvad Srauda Rudhidaka. Eva Garadhina Atra Brahmaiva Akasha Sabdidam. So he gives some explanations why it is Brahman. Akasha means Brahman, because Brahman is the cause of even Akasha and all other entities. Sakasha Jagad Utpatti Hedutvad Srauda Rudhidaka. Jagad Utpatti Siddhilaya Karanam. That applies only to Brahman. Sakasha Jagatpatti means Jagat including Akasha. So according to Purvakshin, Akasha is the origin. But Siddhantin says everything in this world, including Akasha, it emerges from Brahman. Sakasha Jagat Utpatti Kedutvad Srauda Rudhidaka Evakara Adhina Chatra Brahmaiva Akasha Sabdidam. There's an important reason for it. That is, Akasha is the cause of creation of the world, including Akasha. Because Srauda Rudhidaka, it is only mentioned in the Sudhis. Therefore, the word Akasha signifies Brahman. Again, the use of that particular particle, Eva, Akasha Deva, mentioned here in the mantra, in the Sudhi statement. Akasha Deva Imani Bhudani. So, that is, certainly it's from Akasha. Verily it is from Akasha. Eva, in Akashat, Eva also endorses the significance of the word Akasha as understood as Brahman. That is, the Akasha should be understood as Brahman, setting aside all other alternate readings. This idea behind. Sutram also is important. Akashastat lingad. Akasha is Brahman. Why? Because of the lingas. A mark indicating the Brahman is clear. Sarvaniha va imani bhudani akasha deva samupadyande. So Akasha eva is mentioned. Verily, certainly it's from Akasha that all these things emerge. So this is the answer given to Purvakshin, who said Bhudakasha is the implication of Akasha. Because Bhudakasha is the cause of Vayu, Agni, Apa, etc. But Siddhantin says this Brahman is the source of everything in this world, including Bhudakasha. So this is the background here. So when you read this, maybe later on to study in a more traditional way. So there are some important points to be kept in mind. One is called Sangati. Sangati means connectedness. The connection between this Adhikaranam with the previous Adhikaranam. So it is called Pratyudaharana Sangati. That means a connection, because this particular section has got a connection through how counter example connectedness, connected through counter example, Pratyudaharana. In contrast to the previous Adhikarana, there is a kind of counter example connection. That is Pratyudaharana Sankati. So, Vishaya or Samshaya, Purvaksha, Siddhanta and Sankati is very important. Siddhanti proposes the view that the word Akasha occurring in the sentence of the Sri science Brahman only because the word sarva is mentioned here. Eva is mentioned, Akasha Deva is mentioned here. There are 3, 4, 5 lingas and indications which we'll see in the Bhashya, one after another. 4 or 5 lingas are mentioned here. What is linga? Is one of the important pramanas to be understood, or traditionally used in understanding the meaning of Vidhivakyas in Mimamsa tradition, which is used also in Vedanta. So there is a well-known statement here, Nanu Purvatra Avibhijarida Apakata Patmattvadi Brahmalingena Urvotvadigam Manyadhanidam Yatha Na Tatha Iga Lingat Akasha Shabdastudi Anyadha Nidam Shakya Tasyaha Belavatvad. Tasya means Suktiyaha Belavatvad. Ityadaha Aka Purvena Asya Pratidagana Sankadi. Third is important. That is, in the previous Adhikarana, Rupavattum, remember that Hiranmaya Purushaha, and then location, that is Aditya Akshini, etc. The place that we are talking about, the previous Adhikaranam, Antaradhikaranam. That Hiranmaya Purusha, the golden beard, Hiranyasmasruku, Hiranyagesha, then Akshini, Aditya, so all these indicate Rupavattum of that Hiranmaya Purusha. And also the location, Maryada, Sthanam, all these are mentioned here. In contrast to this, here Sutyaha or Tasyaha Belavatvad iti Ataha Aha Purvena Asya Pratidahana Sankati. Connectedness with the previous Adhikaranam is based on this here. So, after this, we will go to the further discussion. So, this is also another important thing. So, about this upasana that is mentioned here, we have to keep in mind, I mentioned earlier, here it is called the Pratikupasana is mentioned here. In some places it will be Sambadupasana. But you remember, these are all related to Vedic tradition. That is an age, a time where there were no temples and there was no image worship. So you find in all these discussions in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, which take examples from Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka and other Upanishads, all these upasanas are Vaidika upasanas and not Tantrika or Aitihasika or Purana upasanas. So here symbolism is frequently taken from nature, from the ancient Vedic symbolism. So Siddhanti, that should be kept in mind, Siddhanti means Akasha is Brahman, because that linga, that is Sutram, mean characteristics or indications. Akasha deva samutpadyante, origin of all these entities is from that Akasha. So that Akasha cannot be Bhudakasha, it should be Brahman. Why? Lingas are mentioned here, indications are mentioned here. What are they? Akasha deva samutpadyante, the origin of everything in this world. Then the point of dissolution of the whole world. Akasham pratyastam yendi, another indication. Then the word all is sarvani ibani bhudani, sarvani bhudani. All these emits, including Akasha. So Akasha also comes from this Akasha. But so what is this Akasha? This Akasha is not Bhudakasha. This Akasha is Brahman Paramatma. Why? Because everything in this world emerges from that Akasha. So that Akasha cannot be Bhudakasha, it should be Brahman, this idea, Sarvani. Again, Paramagati, it is the Gati, the last resort. So also mentioned Jyayan, it is greater than everything else. Again, its ultimate goal. Parayanam, all these are mentioned here. So what is the Bhashyakara's position? Bhashyakara says Akasa itself is produced from Brahman. So the word Akasa here implies Brahman, and it's not Bhudakasha. And again, this creation is established by scripture. Imani Bhudani Jayanti, etc. Sarvani Bhudani, etc. Again, this Akasha, Bhudakasha, essentially it is also is Brahman, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. But if you think of Srishti, it cannot be but an ambulute of the real Brahman. That is the real implication of Akash Shabda in the scripture. And for that, Purvapakshin's arguments are this Srishti, the knowledge comes from Shastra. But so there are certain important arguments here, You can find these subject conventions which I may explain in course of time. That is certain principles wherever there is a Mukhyartha to be taken at that time, Gaunartha, Lakshana should not be taken. Now we will come to the Bhashya proper. If I got the text, you can keep it here. Okay, that's okay now. So, idam amananti, that's the beginning. Asya lokasya ka gatihi iti. Akasha iti hovacha. As I mentioned, this is the Vishaya Vakyam. Akasha iti hovacha. Sarvani hava imani bhudani akasha deva samutpadyante akasham pratyastam yendi akasho heva ebhyo jyayan akasha parayanam iti. Chandogya. So, everything in this world is emerging from that Akasha, and that Akasha is the origin of everything. Atra samsheha, or tatra samsheha padaveda. Kim Akasha shabdena param brahma vidiyati uta bhudakasham iti. So, what is the actual implication of the word Akasha? That Akasha is the parayanam, asraya of everything. That is the source of origin of everything. The source of the solution of everything. So, what is the actual meaning of this Akasha Shabda? The doubt arises because both views can have sanction of Shastra, apparently, on the surface of it. Akasha is used as Akasha, Srishti, Akasha, Atmana Akasha, Akasha, Vayu, Vayu, Ragni, etc. So that can be very easily interpreted according to Purvapakshin's view. Ubhayatra Prayoga Darshanat. So both usages are found in the Shastra, in the Suti. Ubhayatra. That is Akasha in the sense of Bhudakasha. And also Akasha in the sense of Brahman. Both can be possible, probable conclusions, apparently, if you do not consider Vakyasesha, if you do not consider the following statements. If you take just one word, it can very well go along with the views of Purvapakshin. That's why Ubhayatra Prayoga Darshanat. Bhuda Visheshe Tavat Suprasiddhu Loka Vediyohu Akasha Shabdaka. So there is a Loke Prasiddhaka and Vede Prasiddhaka. So Bhudakasha implied by the word Akasha can be found in the common parlance. We can find it there. So, Lokavediyohu Suprasiddhaka. In the Veda you find Atmana Akasha Sambhuda, etc. So you find it. You can find such statements in the Vedas. Then the common language, the common parlance you find the word Akasha means Bhudakasha only. So remember, its connection with with the Upasana method should be kept in mind. And that should be kept in mind when you read the statement Murdhate Vyabhidishyati, etc. If a person does Upasana in the wrong way, if he does Upasana on Bhutakasha as the origin of this universe, at the point of dissolution of the universe, then that person can get spiritually and even intellectually totally confused and lost. That idea is implied by the word Murdhate Vyabhadishyati, used by Shalavatya while talking to the Albhya, and also Pravahana Jaivali when he corrected Shalavatya's own view. So therefore the person who does Upasana, this is related to Upasana, he should know very clear what exactly is the Sankalpa he should have in his mind when he does Upasana. Bhashyakara will establish gradually that there are certain important lingas, characteristics that should be kept in mind to understand. One is Agasadeva Samutpadyanti, that is one linga. So the linga should be explained here. What is linga? So linga is one of the important ways of understanding the actual meaning of a Vidhivakya, mostly used in the Mimamsa tradition. Sudhi, Lingam, Vakyam, Prakaranam, Sthanam, Samakhya. These are the 6 pramanas that should go along with Vidhivakyas to understand the actual meaning or significance of that Vidhi. The Sruti Sutantra, Vrihivid Yajeda, is very clear when you perform yajnas and yagas. It should be yajeda, etc. Lingam has got a specific meaning in Mimamsa tradition called Linga. Linga means Shabda Samarthyam. That's the meaning here. Barhir Deva Sadanam Dami. So, to give an example, I shall explain this because lingam is important here. Tad linga is mentioned here. So, among the 6 linga shashtkam, the word lingam is used in the sutra itself. Akashasta lingat. So, according to Mimamsa tradition, lingam is Shabda Samarthyam. The ability of a word to express what it actually is expressing according to Sudhi tradition. That's the real meaning of lingam. Of course, it's again related to the concept of understanding different words here, Shabda Samarthyam. Samarthyam sarva shabdanam lingam iti abhidhiyate. Samarthyam means prasiddhi. Barhir deva sadanam dami, etc. This mantra is to be recited while cutting the darbha grass. So this mantra is an anga of the particular kriya or ritual involving cutting of the darbha grass in Somayaga tradition. So here in this particular Brahma Sutram, Agashasta Linga, it means there are certain important indications to be mentioned to establish the fact that Akasha in this particular Sutram implies Brahman or Paramatma are not Bhutakasha. So that is the Shabda Samarthyam. And that becomes clear when you read later the following portions of this Vedic statement. So you find here Ubhayatra Prayoga Darshanat Bhuta Vishesh Bhutavisheshe tavat suprasiddho loka vedayohu akash shabdaha. Brahmani abhi kochit prayujyamano drishyate. So in the normal usage in Vedic language, this akasha could mean Bhutakasha, not only in Vedic context, in the context of Vedika Shabdas, but also in the Loga, I mean in the Rudi context, the conventional usage. Frequently found in Brahmani abhi kochit prayujyamano drishyate. Sometimes the Akasha could also mean Brahman. Yatra vakyasesha vashat asadharana gunasravanadva nirdharidam brahma bhavati yatha yadesha akasha anandavanasya etc. So we kept in mind. Yatra vakyasesha vashat. What is vakyasesha? Vakyasesha means when a word is or expression is used in Vedic language, Vedic mantras, you should also carefully examine in which context, which prakarana the word comes and what are the following statements. Suppose you want to know the meaning of a word, you should actually get the background, the context in which that word is used. Then only you will understand the actual meaning of the word. So there is a difference between sense and meaning. Meaning could be what you get in the dictionary. The sense could be the overall actual sense that word actually wants to convey to you. That is Shabda Samarthyam or Lingam. To understand Lingam or the actual meaning of the particular word, you should also carefully examine Vakyasesha. Means what are the Vakyas, what are the words which are expressions that follow that particular word. Then you understand the context in which a particular word is used. If the word is taken out of the context, if you analyze, you will know what it actually meant in the mind of the author or in the content Vedic literature. That's why it says, Brahmani abhi kochit prayujyamano drishyate. In the meaning of Brahma also this Akasha word, Akasha Shabda is used. Yatra vakya sesha vashat. According, in the light of the following statements, the words that follow the particular word Akasha, then you know the actual sense in which the word Akasha is used in the particular mantra. Asadharana gunasravanat. What is asadharana gunasravanam? What are certain important special characteristics that are implied along with Akasha Shabda? To give an example, when word Akasha is used, and they can say, Akasham pratyastam yanti, sarvani hava imani bhudani akashadeva samutpadyanti, Akasham pratyastam yanti, etc. And then, Heva ebhyo dhyayan akasha parayanam, etc. Akasha is the asraya. That is how Jaivali Pravahana concludes. And he says, Akasham pratyastam yanti, all these created beings eventually merge back, get dissolved back into Akasha. And this Akasha is the origin of everything in this world. Then that Akasha cannot be Bhutakasha. What is Bhutakasha? Bhutakasha, the entity from which Vayu comes. So, Akashat Vayu, Vayu Ragni, etc. So these are Vakyaseshas, and then Asadharana Gunasravanat. All these characteristics are indicated in the Sudhi Vakya. That is, Sudha Sravanat means Sudhi Vakyas. Okay, so Nirdharidam Bhavati, Nirdharidam Brahma Bhavati. So because the special features and characteristics of Brahman are mentioned in that context. Yadesha agasha anando nasyad, etc. It comes to the Anandamaya Adhiranam, there Akasha is Brahmavachagatam. Akasha Shabdasya Brahmavachagatam is clear there. Akasho vai nama, nama rupayo nirvahita, te dantara, tad Brahma, etc. So all this Akasha is actually the one from which this everything, all the nama rupas are coming to existence. All these are mentioned here. Tad Brahma, Idi Chaivamadu. So all the nama rupas are existing in that Akasha. Ulpatti, Sthiti, Laya Hedu. That is implied here. Akasho vai nama, nama rupayo nirvahita, te dantara, etc. So the Ulpatti, Sthiti, Laya Hedu tum of Akasha is mentioned here. So that means the Akasha should not be taken as Bhudakasha. Tad Brahma, then Atra Samsheha. Kim Punaratra Yuktam Bhudakashamidi. So the point is, the Purvakshin concludes, according to his view, he says, Bhudakashamidi. Kutaka Tathi Prasiddhadarena Prayogena Sigram Buddhimarohadi. So this is an important point, remember. When you read a word, when somebody utters the word, when you first listen to a word, what's the meaning that occurs immediately in your mind? How does it strike your mind? How does it occur in your mind? When you listen to a word for the first time, let us say, what sense comes to your mind? That's a conventional meaning, accumulated meaning, samudaya shakti. A word when it's used by people for centuries in a specific sense and meaning, and we also use it commonly in common parlance, that's the real meaning that comes to your mind when you read a word, when you listen to a word, when you read a word. That is called rudhi. That is rudhi, conventional meaning of word. So that is the argument of the Purvakshin. Purvakshin says, Ata Samshekha, keep Punaratra Uktam Bhudakashamiti. So you can see the discussion, how the discussion moves ahead. First of all, the word Akasha is used in Vedas and also in normal conversation. Bhashyam mentioned earlier, Ubhayatra Prayoga Darshanad, Bhuda Visheshe Tavat Suprasiddhu Loka Vediyahu Akasha Shabdaka. So, normal conversation. Suprasiddha means, in common parlance, normal conversation. The word Akasha has got one meaning. That is, for example, the guna of Akasha is Shabda. Shabda is the guna of Akasha. If you read in an elementary book on Indian philosophy, that's how Akasha is understood. Then Atmana Akasha Sambhudaka, etc. Here Bhudakasha is also mentioned. So this is an example. At the same time, Brahmanyava Kujit Prayujyamanu Drishadi. The word Akasha Shabda is used in the meaning of Brahman also. Yatra Vakya Vishesha Vashat Asadharana Guna Sravanadva. One is, you may read in a scripture the word Akasha. But you read further, when you observe the Vakyasesha or the special characteristics which are explained in the coming statements, in the following statements, then you come to a conclusion as to what it means. Then you may conclude it means Brahman. So there are two different ways. So how this discussion is progressing. And now the question arises, what is the real meaning? Punaratra yuktam, kim punaratra yuktam? Bhudakashamidi. This is Purvakshin's view, Bhutakasha. Kutaha tadhi prasiddhatarena prayogena sigram buddhim arohati. What comes to your mind, your buddhi, your intellect when you read a word, listen to a word? What is that? Prasiddhatara. Prasiddhara means rudhi, rudhyartha. So, prasiddhatara prayoga means rudhyartham. What everyone knows, what everyone understands, normal conversation, normal context. There are 4 senses in which words could be used. Yogica, derivative. The derivative, you look at the dictionary, look at the other technical books on other lexicography resources, and you find the yogica artha, the derivative. Rudhi means conventional. Then yoga rudha and yogiya rudha. But yogica and rudha both are important. Rudhi means conventional usage. Yoga is derivative. Naigama rudhi bhavam hi sadhu, that is Vartika. And Panini's Sutra statement is also there. That is Samudaya Shakti. A meaning of a word that gets established in common parlance as a result of usage among common people. Language evolves when the same word is used by people from different strata of society. Then the word could change, can alter, can get expanded. Sometimes, the word can also, for example, the person's names may be Gauranga, but it's jet black. So there is a difference between the yogica meaning and the person's real features. So the word may not necessarily imply what its derivative meaning indicates. It could be the opposite, it could be different. All these possibilities are there in the Vyakhana Shastra. So, prasiddhatarena prayogena sigram buddhim arokati. Purvakshin has got a strong point here. What he says is, rudhyartha is what comes to your mind when you listen to a word, buddhim arokati. Nacha ayam akashabda Bhayoho sadharana sakyo vijñātam anegartha prasangat. So of course it comes here. Now the point is this. Nacha ayam agashabdahu bhayoho sadharana sakyo vijñātam. You cannot accept that a single word can have 2 different meanings which are equally acceptable. So that's why Purvakshin says, we must take the conventional rudhyartha. That Bhutakasha is the correct meaning. That's what he says. Nacha ayam agashabdaha ubayoho sadharana shakyo vijñātu anegartha prasangat. A single word having different meanings, that cannot be accepted. A single word having different meaning, that cannot be accepted. That's against Jaimini's fundamental principle. Jaimini makes it very, very clear in his own statement. And also other according to our tradition, the same word cannot have 2 different meanings. Purvakshin says, so you can find gradually, Purvakshin says, so Akashabda can be Brahman only in the Amukhyartha, not in Mukhyartha. Suppose you have 2 meanings for a word. One could be Mukhyartha, other could be Gaunartha, Amukhyartha. So, suppose Simho Manavaka, this is an example. The Brahmachari is a lion. So it doesn't mean that the brahmachari has got a tail and he looks like a lion, not at all. Here's some of the characteristics, gunas of lion. So gaunartha, secondary sense, it can be used. Like that, Akash Shabda can have a secondary meaning, gaunartha, at Brahman, but not mukhyartha. That is a Purvapaksh's argument. So Brahman is Akash Sadrisha. For example, Akasha is Sarvavyapi, there is a Nirlebattum, Vibhuttum, Niravayavattum, Adindriyattum, Sarvagadattum, all these characteristics. Akasha, space is all pervading, like Brahman. It is Nirleba, it is not affected. If there are clouds, the clouds don't affect the sky. Niravayavattum, it doesn't have any avayavas. It is adindriya, it is transcendental, not physically verifiable. So all these characteristics in a way are saying the same as Brahman. So Purvapakshi says, all right, if you want to give the meaning of Brahman to Akasha, all right, you give in Gaunartha, Amukhyartha. But cannot be given Mukhyartha. There cannot be two Mukhyarthas for the same word. Anegarthatva prasangat. It's impossible. Vishnu, the very Vishnu vyapnodi. But the conventional meaning of Vishnu is Vishnu in Vaikuntha, that's Vishnu's conventional meaning. But if you take the etymological meaning, vyapnodi the Vishnu, so the air is also all pervading. Space also is all pervading. But when you use the word Vishnu, what comes to your mind is Mahavishnu, Vaikuntha. Like that, Akasha has got a well-established meaning, Rudhyartha. Naigama Rudi Bhavam hi sadhu. That is Rudhyartha, that is Bhutakasha. These are the arguments coming from Purvapakshi. Bhutakashamiti Kutaka Tadhi Prasiddharena Prayogena Sigram Buddhim Arohati. What comes to your mind immediately? That is Akasha. Nacha ayam Akashabda Vuyoko Sadharana Shakyo Vijnadam. You cannot have one word, two different meaning. Anegarthatu prasanga. Tasmad Brahmani Gauna Akashabdo Bhavitam Arhati. So he says, he gives a concession that all right, in that case you can have Akasha, you can say Akasha means Brahman only the Gauna sense. That means in the secondary sense. So, you can imagine how Purvapakshi builds his argument. Siddhanti will say, Akasha eva samutpadyante, eva used, everything is emerging from that Akasha, that cannot be Bhutakasha. Akasha pratyastam yanti, that also cannot be Bhutakasha. Akasha heva jyayan, Akasha heva ebhyo jyayan, that cannot be Bhutakasha. Akasha parayanam, that cannot be Bhutakasha. Then Akasha is ananta. It can mean Bhutakasha, but actually it could only mean Brahman, that makes sense. So these are the arguments coming from Purvapakshi. So I have already outlined the arguments of Purvapakshi and also Siddhanti before we already come to the subject here. So now coming to the subject. Here, so the point is linga, the importance of linga should be kept in mind. 6 pramanas that go along with the vidhivakyas. According to traditional Mimamsa statements, when they are interpreted, to specify some of the details that go along with certain vidhivakyas, which also imply how a ritual should be performed, how a havis should be offered. So they had to use these tools to finally decide the actual implication of the vidhivakyas. That is, Sudhi, Vakyam, Pragaranam, Sthanam, Samakhya. Sudhi, Lingam, Vakyam, Pragaranam, Sthanam, Samakhya. Lingam is second one in category. Lingam is Sarva Srishti Sthiti Samkhara Yogyam Lingam. That is actually the lingam of the Akashabda when interpreted as Brahman. Sarva Srishti Sthiti Samkhara Yogyatvam. That Yogyatvam, that lingam can only go along with Akashabda when it is interpreted as Brahman, as the source of everything. That is the Siddhanti's argument. Tasma Brahmani Gauna Akashabdo Bhavidam Arhati. So Purvapakshi is giving a concession. All right, your Akashabda can have a Gaunartha as Brahman. Vibhutva Bahubhi Dharmaihi Sadrisham Akashena Brahma Bhavadi. Vibhutva. Then Bahubhi Dharmaihi. Number of characteristics. Vibhutvam, Sarvavyapitvam, Sarvagadatvam. Well, all these are certainly in some ways characteristics that can be broadly attributed to Akasha, Bhutakasha and also Brahman. Actually cannot be, but Purvapakshi can argue that way. There is a point in what he says. So he says, Akasha is Vibhu like Brahman. So Gaunavritya, okay. In Amukhyartha, Akasha could mean Brahman, but only in Gaunartha, Amukhyartha, not in Mukhyartha. Sambhavati chaiha mukhyasya akashasya grahanam. So, here what it means is, Mukhyartha is Bhudakasha. That's the argument of the Purvapakshas. That is, Amukhyartha cannot be accepted when Mukhyartha is obvious. According to Purvapakshi, what is the Mukhyartha? Akasha means Bhudakasha. That's the Mukhyartha of Purvapakshi. And when Mukhyartha is obvious, can be accepted, then Amukhyartha, Gaunartha, cannot be accepted. So you may call a person a tiger, but the person who calls him a tiger knows he is not a tiger. The person whom you call, he also knows that he is not a tiger. He also knows he is not a tiger. Still, we just call like that. Nobody minds. If literally we call it a tiger, it would be a problem. So Bhashyakara says, Purvapakshi says, when Mukhyartha can be accepted as Bhudakasha, the Amukhyartha, Gaunartha Brahman cannot be attributed to Akasha. Therefore, Akashabda means always Bhudakasha, nothing else. This is the argument of the Purvapakshi. Okay, now clear. In doubt, we can ask. This is slightly involved arguments. Now Siddhanti says, Nanu Bhudakasha Parigrahi Vakyasheshu Navapadyati Sarvani Kava Imani Bhudani Akasha Deva Samutpadyante Ityadi. Here Siddhanti gives an objection to Purvapakshi's argument. When Purvapakshi argued that the Mukhyartha of Akashabda is Bhudakasha, maybe Gaunartha can be Brahman, but when there is a Mukhyartha which is acceptable, the Gaunartha, Amukhyartha need not be considered at all. Lakshana or Gauna could be taken only when Mukhyartha is not, it cannot be accepted. That's not the case. Mukhyartha is perfectly acceptable. So, Nanu Bhudakasha Parigrahe Vakyasheshu Navapadyati. If you take Bhudakasha, the point is Vakyashesha. Vakyashesha, I mentioned earlier, certain statement that come along with that, accompanying that same Akashabda. It will not be appropriate, it doesn't tally, doesn't agree with the context. So, what is the Sarvani Hava Imani Bhudani Akasha Deva Eva? That is important. So, you have to remember, in the Vaiyasika Nyayamala, Evakara, means the word Eva is very important for Siddhanti's argument. It's Akasha Deva. From Akasha alone, everything comes into existence. We mean Akasha also comes from Akasha. So what is the Akasha? The source, it could be Brahman, not the Buddha Akasha. Bhudakasha is a karya of Brahman. Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Abha, all emanates from same Brahman. That's Siddhanti's argument. Siddhanti's argument says the word Akasha, Sarvani Imani Bhudani, Bhudani Akasha, Eva, Jagat Karanattum. Sarva Jagat Karanattum is implied here. So, Akasha Deva Samutpadyante Ityadi. So, Purva says, Naisa Doshaka. It's not a problem. Bhudakashasyapi Vayuadikramena Karanatupapattehi. So, actually, Akashat Vayu, Vayu, Rakni, Akter, Apahadya, etc. So, from Akasha Vayu comes, Vayu, Agni comes, Akner, Apaha comes. In that case, Vayu Adi Kramena, indirectly, it's succession. Through gradual progression and succession, Jagat Karanatam can be attributed to Bhudakasha also. Bhudakashasya api Vayuadikramena Karanatvam. I mean, Sarva Jagat Karanatvam. That's the idea behind it. Upatehi. Vijnayadehi Tasmad Vayadasmat Atmana Akasha Sambhudaha Akashat Vayu Rakni etc. Ityadi. The Bhudakasha is the Karana of Vayu, Agni, Abha, Prithivi etc. This is the Purvakshi's argument. Ityadi. So you have to remember what are the lingas that is going to be outlined here. The lingas are mentioned in the coming statements here. That comes here one after another. That is this Sarva Jagat Karanata Brahmalingas should be kept in mind. There is Sarva Jagat Karanatva Bhudanam Utpattihi. That is one linga. Linga means mark or indicator. And also one of the 6 pramanas that should be considered to understand the actual meaning, implication, significance of a Vidhivakya. I call it Purvamamsa tradition. That's what the origin. Sarva Jagat Karanatvam Bhudanam Utpattihi. Second one, Tadakasham Pratyastam Yanti. So, Jagat Karanatvam, again, Jagat Pralayatvam. That everything, Pralaya, Utpatti and Pralaya, both in Akasha. Akasha Ebhyo Jyayan. Akasha is superior, greater than all these. Akasha Parayanam. Asaya, Akasha is the last. Then, Anandyam, infinity. Source of all, merging back to the original source, greater than everything, supreme goal and infinity. Anandyam. All this cannot be attributed to Bhudakasha. So these are the lingas. So what should be kept in mind? Lingas. That's an important topic of discussion in this particular adhikaranam. So tasmad by yadasmad atmana akasha sambhudaga akashat vayu rakti kshatra ityadi jyayastu parayanatve api bhudantara apekshayohu upapadyate bhudakashasyapi. So Jayastu Parayanatvam. When is Jayan Prithivyaha? Prithivya, Jayan, Prithivyaha, Jayan, Antariksha, Jayan, etc. Akasha is meant, is said, explained in the Sudhis to be greater than Prithivi, greater than Antariksha, greater than everything else. So, api Bhudantara Pekshayoku Upapadyate Bhudakasha Syapi. So, it is greater than Bhudakasha also. So, anyway, so Purvakshin is continuing his argument. Tasmat, Akashabdena Bhudakasasya Grahanam iti. Why? Because Akasha is explained to be Prithivyaha Jyayan, Antariksha Jyayan, etc. Jya means Seshthatara. So, other, it is greater than Bhudantara Apekshayoku Upapadyate. Jayastu Parayanatve. So Jayastum Parayanatve. It is the ultimate support, Gati, last resort, and also greatness, being greater than everything else in a comparative degree. That can be attributed to Bhudakashasyapi. That can go along with Bhudakasha also. Again, Purvakshi's argument. Tasmat Akashabdena Bhudakashasya Grahanam iti, Purvakshi says. So it's clear. Akashat Vayurakti Kshatta ityadi Jayastu Varayanati Api Bhudantarapekshayohu Upadyati. So this Bhudakasha also has got Jayastum Varayanattu, means being greater than other Bhudas, and then ultimate source, ultimate asraya, pradishtha, everything else. Bhudantarapekshayohu Upadyati Bhudakashasyapi. Other Buddhas, when compared to other Buddhas, Akasha is certainly greater. It can be the ultimate support, it can be the source, the pradishtha, compared to, in contrast to other Buddhas. Tasmat Akasha Shabdena Bhudakashasya Grahanam iti. Evam Prate Brahmahat. So, up to this is an argument of Purvakshins. That's why it's called Siddhanta Sutram. So, Advaiti Sri Shankaracharya is establishing his view that Akasha here actually implies Brahman by interpreting Akasha the Lingat. Linga should be the Shabda Samarthyam, this meaning, I already explained. Meaning of Linga according to Mala Bhatta and others. So, no, Shabda Samarthyam. The ability of a word to expound, to reveal clearly what it actually means in the most acceptable Sruti context. That is Lingam. So what are the Lingas here? The coming pages, Bhashyam has explained Brahma Lingas. Sarva Jagat Karanatvam Bhudanam Utpatti Tada Akasham Pratyastam Yanti. First, being source of the entire creation existence, and also the point of dissolution of everything in this world, tada akasham pratyastam yanti. Again, greater than everything, akasha ebhyo jyayan, akasha parayanam, that the supreme goal, ultimate destination, and the infinity, Anandyam. All these are different lingas, Brahma lingas, are going to be established here. Bhashyakara begins, Akasha Shabdena Brahmano Grahanam Yuktam. The word Akasha Shabda, the actual meaning is Brahman. Means Akasha Shabda has got the Samarthyam, the efficiency, to reveal that it means Brahman, Shabda Samarthyam, that's the meaning. Samarthyam Sarva Shabdanam Lingam iti abhijiyate. Samarthya can also mean Prasiddhi. Here means Deva Sadanam. So when certain mantras are read or uttered, the mantra is to be recited, and along with that recitation, a kriya, a prayoga, a ritual is to be performed. It is implied that Shabda itself reveals the actual implication that Shabda Samarthyam is Lingam. Tad Lingad. That is, in the Akasha Shabda, the Shabda Samarthyam is involved. Parasyahi Brahmanaha idam lingam sarvani khava imani bhudani akasha deva samutpadyante. Idi. Parasmat hi brahmano bhudanam utpatti riti vedanteshu maryada. So, maryada means something which is very well understood, an established fact, a paradigm, a method which is universally accepted, well established. That's the meaning of Maryada here. So Maryada is used in the previous Adhiharanam also, while discussing the Tantra Adhiharanam, etc. So there may be slight variation but in understanding meaning, the sense of that expression. So Parasyahi Brahmanaha idam lingam. That is, this lingam, this particular Aga Shabda has got the Shabda Samarthyam to reveal the fact that it means Parabrahman. Sarvani Hava Imani Bhudani Akasha Deva Samutpadyante. Idi. It's already established here. This shows that Akasha is Brahman. The ability of a word to expound, reveal the actual meaning, significance of the particular context according to Maryada. Parasmahi Brahmano Bhudanam Utpatti Sri Veda Idi Vedanteshu Maryada. Now here, of course, Purvapakshi has got a counter argument. Nanu Bhudakasasyapi Vayadikramena Karanatvam Darshitam. Purvapakshi argues. Alright, but Bhudakasha also can be expounded to be the source of everything. How Vayadikramena, Akashad Vayu, Vayu, Raknyakdira, Abhi Prithivi, Pradhyam, Oshay, Annam, etc. The whole creation comes from Akasha. It can be interpreted as Purvakshi's argument. Siddhanti says Satyam Darshinam. Alright, that's true. Tathapi Mula Karanasya Brahmano Aparigrahada Agasha Deva Idi Avadharanam. So the point is, here they have completely excluded Brahman here. The Vayadikrama Srishti doesn't include Brahman. Agasha Deva, Vayu, etc. So how can you say that all these things emerge from Akasha, but then Brahman is nowhere mentioned here? So that's the Siddhanti's argument. Satyam Darshita. Alright, you did that. Tathapi Mula Karanasya. What is Mula Karanam? That is Brahman. Sarva Jagat Karanam. That is Brahman. Bhudanam Utpatti Sthiti Laya Karanam. That is Brahman. Brahmanaha Aparigrahad. It is not even included here, not considered here. Then Akasad Eva Iti Avadharanam. So Akasad Eva. If Akasha, if the Sruti says from Akasha alone, certainly it is from Akasha, verily from Akasha. Then that Akasha cannot be Bhutakasha. So, if somebody is talking about your name, say but he is 10 feet tall, 20 feet tall, they cannot be you, somebody else. There is total inconsistency. So, Siddhantin says, everything emerges from Akasha, but then you don't ever anywhere consider or count or include Brahman. You are talking about something other than Brahman. That's true. Actually, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, all these are emerging from Brahman. But Brahman is nowhere mentioned here. Instead of that, Akasha, which is one of the evolute of Brahman, is mentioned to be the source of everything. Brahman is left out. That is Brahmanaha Aparigrahad. Again, Akasha Deva. From Akasha alone, everything emerges. Akasha means everything, including Brahman also emerges from Akasha. It cannot be accepted. So that Akasha cannot be Bhudakasha. It should be Brahman. Why? Because Vakyashesha, Eva, the word Akasha, Eva, all these indicate that Akasha actually implies Brahman and not Bhudakasha. This is Siddhanti's view.
Maharaj, why is this called, you mentioned, Pratyudarana Sangati?
Pratyudaharana Sangati. So the point is, same illustration, but counter, different kind of illustration. Compared to the previous Adhikarana, The illustration is there, but it is slightly different illustration. But here, Suddhi itself says everything. Suddhi is stronger, higher, greater. So, why? Because the previous statement, Suddhi has to be modified. Here, Suddhi has to be stated. In the previous Dhiranam, few things have to be brought into. But here, Suddhi itself is paramount. Explain. This is Pratyudaharana. I mean, counter illustration. Connectedness, being in connection with the previous Adhikarana through a different kind of illustration. So if you look at the way Bhashyakara went about expounding the Rupavatvam, Maryada, Adharat, all of Akshini Purusha, Aditya Purusha, and how he treat this particular statement, because Akasha Dhiranam, the Suddhi itself is paramount. Only it is slightly interpreted differently. Akasha is Brahman understood, but Akasha is Bhuta Akasha according to Purvakshi. But if you look at the Vakishesha, and there is Akasha Eva, then you find it cannot be your Bhuta Akasha. Bhuta Akasha, the word is right, same Akasha, but the Akasha here means Brahman. Okay?
Okay.
So, already it's almost 9:05 here in the evening, night. Okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.